Writing Out Loud, a program designed to explore in-depth interviews with writers to hear that words have voices.
Hello everyone, I'm Teresa Miller and welcome to Writing Out Loud. My very special guest today is Dr. deGrasse Tyson, who is the author of the Pluto Files, The Rise and Fall of America's Favorite Planet. You're also the host of Nova Science Now and the director of the Hayden Planetarium.
Yeah, all of the above, yeah.
And in addition to all of that, you're the sexiest astrophysicist in the world. That's according to People.
Well, that was 8 years ago. Now 9 years ago.
But there's been no successor name, so
No,
you're the acting sexiest.
Yeah, that category came and went.
Yes. Well, congratulations.
Okay, well, thank you.
We've never had a sexiest person on the show before, so it's a landmark program
Thank you.
for us. A lot of us, Neil, may I call you Neil?
Sure, by all means.
A lot of us, Neil, look up to the stars, and we take great pleasure in pointing out the constellations, but stargazing is a calling for you. What came together in your psyche to make you an astrophysicist?
I was a kid.
Yeah.
A 9-year-old kid visited my local planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium in New York, that I'm now director of. It does sound like one of those stories, hometown kid does good and comes back, but although that plays less well in New York because the city's too big for that to really matter. And I was just starstruck by the stars that came out on that dome, to the point where I thought it was a hoax. I said, there are not that many stars. I know, because I've seen the sky from the Bronx in New York.
Yeah.
There's like a dozen stars. So it's a fun exercise, but I don't, it's fun. I'll enjoy it while it's here, but I'm not going to get bent out of shape about it. Only later would I learn that that was the real sky. And it would take between age 9 and 11 to cement within me that this can be a career. And so by the time I turned 11, and if you ask me what I want to be when I grow, I'd say astrophysicist. And it's been that ever since. Ever since.
When you're 11 years old and you aspire to be an astrophysicist, who are the role models you look to?
No, there are no role models. So what you do, I think the concept of role model is overrated. Because it's, okay, if you want to be a lawyer, doctor, and traditional profession that you always see on television in evening dramas, then you could easily find a role model who came from your background and is just what you want to be when you grow up. But when you want to be an astrophysicist or an entomologist or some profession that's not common, it is unrealistic. In fact, it's irresponsible of you to try to find a person out there who is that track, because you're not. And if you did, what choice was it that you had? What selection did you have?
Good point.
So I constructed my role models a la carte. So I found the scientist whose command of the universe I wanted as the day when I grew up. I found an educator who could capture the interest and excitement of an audience as they were taught some new concept or another. My parents, who are have high integrity, and so it took maybe half a dozen people to make the role model that I then set for myself. And it's not that hard to do.
Tell us about your special relationship with Carl Sagan.
Well, actually, we've met only like 4 times. But for me, they were significant. I don't know what they were to him, but to me, they were significant. First time while I was in high school, he invited me to Cornell University, where he was on the faculty. And why would he invite me? I was just some kid in the Bronx. Yeah. Interested in the universe, but my application to college revealed this fact, and I would later learn that it was the admissions office that forwarded my application to him for his reaction. And the way he reacted is he invited me to visit him in his lab in Cornell on a snowy weekend, and there I was, just in his office, and he was telling me about the lab and what interests him, and he asked me what interested me, and I just thought, this is remarkable.
Yes, it is.
Because at the time, this is some time ago, before his famous Cosmos series, but he was already famous, having appeared on The Tonight Show many times. He was almost a household name among scientists. And so, but to this day, I interact with students with the level of respect and dignity that he interacted with me. And it doesn't matter whether I've ever met the student before. If you care and you want to learn, I'm there for you. And so it's affected me ever since. And meanwhile, just look at what he's done, the books he's written and the TV he's done. Whatever I do, I look around and say, hey, actually, Carl's did it before me. You know, I mean, he's been there, done that. You know, so I'm here just kind of in this carved swath of brush that he left behind. I can stand straighter than he could because he's cutting the brush, and I'm just looking around and say, hey, this feels good. So we're in a lot of the same business right now, bringing the universe and science literacy to the public. Oh, yeah. And I couldn't be what I am without him having done what he did.
When you bring science to the public, when you bring the universe to the general public, is there any risk you take when you talk about scientific details of demystifying the universe? Instead of looking at moonbeams, we're looking at streams of dust particles.
Oh, it can be both. Yeah, when I look at a sunset, yes, I know there's thermonuclear fusion in the core, combining hydrogen atoms at 15 million degrees. And it's a beautiful sunset. It's both. I can think of it as just simply a beautiful, colorful, orange sunset. And so I see it as enhancing your appreciation of nature, not diminishing it. And if the act of understanding something makes it less for you, then okay, I'm not going to try to change that, but consider that for every new thing we learn about the universe, there's like 10 other things that we didn't even think to ask. Every new thing we learn, we are standing in a new place, and that new place allows us to see more mysteries. And these mysteries seem to be unending. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about scientific research. There might be a day where all the questions are answered, but we're nowhere near, that's not in sight right now. So there's always a new mystery to confront. And so you should come to learn to love the questions themselves.
What were some of the most important questions you had to ask when you wrote the book Death by Black Hole?
Death by Black Hole, that's actually my most successful book. People resonate deeply with it. And I'm happy to say that because I know what I put into that book as a writer. That is a collection of essays that I'd written and appeared in Natural History magazine, updated as necessary. But that collection is the sum and the pinnacle of my efforts to bring the universe to an otherwise disinterested reader. So in other words, I don't expect you to like science or even want to learn about science for you to like that book. I took on the challenge as writer to say, I think you don't care. What can I write? What combinations of words can I put together on a page that will suck you in such a way that you not only can't leave, you don't want to leave, and you want to keep learning about the universe. Because it's not just a matter of content. It's a matter of making the content relevant to the reader, so that the reader feels like they are part of the flow of information. And one of the nicest compliments I got for it is that a person who at some time had heard me give a talk or had maybe met me at one point said, you know, I'm reading it, and it's as though we're just sitting together on a couch in front of a fireplace, just talking about the universe. And I took that as a very high compliment because that's what I tried to make the book become. I didn't want it to be time for your science lesson, sit down and drink your coffee and now learn your science. I wanted it to be much more of a fireside chat. And so that involves caring about the length of sentences, what words you choose, what are the cultural references that infuse those sentences. Is it just you're here and the science is here, or is there any place where you can meet in the middle so that the lexicon is not foreign to you, so that you can receive the information as a person who never knew they were hungry for it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think you do so well is that you ask the questions that we all want answered. And sometimes you don't know the answers to them, and we can't find the answers to them, but you ask the right questions and you pull us in. In the book that you co-wrote, Origins, which was a companion book to the very popular series, you have a whole section devoted to the origin of life. Let's start with origin of life on Earth. What do we know? What do we not know?
Well, we still have no clue. Well, that's not true. We have some clues, but unverified clues about how you go from inanimate molecules to what anyone would just agree upon looking under a microscope would be judged as life. And so now, fascinating that the early Earth had no trouble doing this. All right? Inanimate molecules were not around for very long before the earliest signs of single-celled life permeates the records, the geologic record. And so just because we have trouble crossing that gap doesn't mean nature did.
Right.
And so often we see our own capacity to think or our own intelligence as some measure of what nature is capable of. Nature's much cleverer than we are. Nature
Thank
figures
goodness.
stuff out. Right, so there's a lot, so we're not the measure of what's possible. Our ability to think about a solution to something is not what limits nature. So, but once you have single-celled life, we have a very, very good understanding of how life can gain diversity of form, who can occupy different niches within the earth, because some parts of the earth are hot, some parts are cold.
Yeah.
And if you want to be exploitive of environment, as life appears to be and is, it needs ways to adapt to its environment. And this is one of the great triumphs of life on Earth. We have life at the bottom of the ocean and flying through the skies in hot temperatures, low temperatures, wet climates, dry climates. And so practically every square inch of the Earth is populated by some kind of life form or another. So the origins question with regard to life remains unanswered. And so, but there are intriguing hints, because you can take basic ingredients, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and just put them in a beaker and sort of shake it up and give it an energy source and wait a while. Out of that comes complex molecules. Some of the molecules that are fundamental to the proteins that comprise life as we know it. And so shake and bake a beaker for a few weeks and you get complex molecules. Earth has billions of years to do the same experiment. None of us doubt that given that much time that you wouldn't be able to form the simplest kind of life that we know, these single-cell organisms. By the way, Earth was single-cell for billions of years. The Earth didn't get interesting life, by what we might think of as interesting, with limbs and locomotion. That didn't happen until like 500 million years ago. Most of the history of the Earth, it's just single-celled organisms, just enjoying the place.
What about life beyond Earth? You know, there are a lot of UFO enthusiasts out there, and some of them seem pretty credible, to tell you the truth, Neil.
Well, the problem is credibility has nothing to do with your profile. What we know from psychology research and what we know just from 400 years of doing experimental science, that the least reliable evidence you can bring to the table is eyewitness testimony. The methods and tools of science are conceived and designed to reduce as much as possible your sensory measures of the world. Your brain, your ears, your smell, your sight. These are so fault-ridden as to be practically useless in any scientific investigation. Now, that doesn't mean that you didn't see a UFO. I'm just saying that if you see something that you've never seen before, there's a higher likelihood your account of it is going to be flawed than if you had some other way to measure what's going on. So all I would tell UFO people is, if you see aliens from another planet, that's extraordinary. I need better evidence than your eyewitness testimony if you want to tell me that something extraordinary happened. So go steal something off the spaceship, okay? Next time you're abducted and you're laying there in the slab and they're poking you, you know, just tell the aliens, look over there, and then like steal like the ashtray off the shelf, put it in your pocket, and then come back off the ship, bring that to the lab. Then we have something of alien manufacture that we can then evaluate. Without that, it's just not useful scientifically. Go keep looking for them. Or better yet, bring me a dragon alien into the lab, bring it out into the square. All right, then we're talking.
And you'll put them on Noah Science Now.
I'll be the first one there. Well, that'd be an exciting moment, but that hasn't happened.
We mentioned at the top of the show that you're director of the Hayden Planetarium. Tell us a little bit about the mission of the planetarium and how it operates on a day-to-day basis.
The Hayden Planetarium is rare among planetariums in that it's part of a much larger research museum. The American Museum of Natural History is a collections-based museum, which means the scientific study takes place on specimens. So the zoological departments, the Department of Mammalogy and entomology and what's birds, ichthyology, and all of these, they have samples that they study, and they look at the diversity of life on Earth. In the astrophysics group, our sort of samples, if you will, are data from telescopes like the Hubble and elsewhere, and we study those data. So we're part of that. So we have an academic legacy there at the institution. We have dozens of scientists, and we design educational programs that serve the public, also K through 12. We have an education department that studies what's the cognitive difference between a third grader and a fifth grader, which I won't necessarily know, but they know. And they design programs that serve that market, and they'll plug us in when they need the expertise. And in that way, we're kind of an organism, an educational and scientific organism. And we have the feature of the planetarium is the space show. And nowadays, it costs like millions of dollars to make. In the old days, the planetarium director would come out, and the voice would come from the dome, and you do 4 of those a year. And nowadays, you can't do that. No one would come to see that. You might come once a month just to find out what was going on in the night sky, but not to deliver the frontier of science. So we have much more video technologies involved in taking you to places you've never been or dreamt of in the universe.
Well, the Hayden was the first public institution to come out and reclassify. This is tough. I knew this is a dark turn we're
You
making.
had to go there.
Had
okay.
to go there. This is serious.
Okay.
Reclassify Pluto as a dwarf planet, Neil.
Yeah, actually, we didn't name it. We didn't give it a new kind of name. All we did back in 2000, when we opened our new facility, which underwent a major renovation at the time, all we did was we looked at the writing on the wall. We saw that new icy bodies were being discovered in the outer solar system that kind of looked like Pluto and kind of smelled like Pluto and had orbits that were like Pluto. And we said, well, maybe Pluto is part of this new class of object recently discovered, rather than just the most diminutive of the planets. So we grouped Pluto with these other icy bodies in the outer solar system. And there the exhibit stayed for about a year. No one took notice, no one cared, until a newspaper reporter overheard a mother talking to her kids. Kids said, "Mommy, where's Pluto? It's got to be there somewhere. Where's Pluto? Check again. Where's Pluto?" And then they went through. My very educated mother just served us nine what? Yeah, they couldn't finish the thing. So this became like a scandal.
Oh, huge.
Page 1 story in the New York Times, Pluto not a planet, only in New York was the title. And my phone is ringing off the hook. I start getting hate mail from third graders. I was public enemy because that's their favorite planet, because there's a dog with that name, a cute, cuddly dog. And so you got me all pumped up now. I'm trying.
Yeah,
I was calm a moment ago, wasn't I?
No.
So turns out eventually the professional scientific community officially reclassified Pluto. And so we were just the first public institution to do it. Others followed suit, and now basically the world agrees with most of the world agrees with our treatment.
Well, your book, The Pluto Files, The Rise and Fall of America's Favorite Planet, is so charming, and you include this letter from an elementary student and said, "We're sorry about giving you mean letters saying we love Pluto, but not you. I'm very sorry. It'll be okay."
That letter came after. That was like 6 years later.
6 years?
6 years. That was not at the time when we first demoted it, because those letters were mean. 6 years later, this kid is now 7 years old. That kid was not even born, was barely born at the time the first demotion came. So what we have, interestingly, is a wave of elementary school children born into the new knowledge of the outer solar system. And so they're much more sympathetic to the cause, as that letter was.
Yeah, Taylor's maybe a future astrophysicist, who knows?
Right.
What made Pluto so important to us culturally?
The dog.
Do you think it all gets
Oh,
down to
yes.
the dog?
You go to Europe and ask them, "Do you like Pluto?" They don't care. If you said you're demoting Pluto, they wouldn't care any more than they cared if you demoted Neptune. It's not cultural with them. Here in America, an American discovered Pluto, the only planet discovered by an American, planet at the time discovered by an American.
Yeah.
The Pluto, the dog, Disney's dog, that dog belongs to Mickey. Disney is American iconography.
Yeah, yeah.
And that dog was first sketched the same year Pluto the cosmic object was discovered. So they each have the same tenure in the hearts and minds of Americans.
Yeah.
And so I'm convinced it's just the dog. The dog enabled you to have warm and fuzzy feelings about a cosmic object. And when you're a kid, when things have the same name, they have to think extra hard about that fact. Does that mean it is the same thing? You know, I don't know if you remember when you're a kid, the first time you meet someone else that has your name,
Oh, very true.
it's like, wow, do you check to see if other things are the same. It's not the first thought that, oh, you're completely different, you just happen to have the same name. You're looking for things that are the same because the name is everything to you. So how old are you when you first learn about Disney characters? You're like first, second, third grade. How old are you when you first learn the planets? First, second, third grade. So
Good association, yes.
Pluto, the cosmic object, has warm and fuzzy associations that no other cosmic object has.
If Pluto was the most popular planet, what planets are in contention for runner-up?
Earth.
Earth, yes, it was good.
Totally Earth. Mars is fun because Mars
Yeah.
exists in our lore. You know,
A lot of sci-fi movies.
well, sci-fi movies, Martians, and what's the one, the invasion?
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
Yes.
That radio play and book and movie, it's Martians.
Yeah.
Those are Martians, aliens that came to kill us all. So Mars has this grip on our sort of sci-fi culture that I think is hard to shake. But also, another favorite planet out there is Saturn, just because it's so beautiful. It's my favorite planet.
Yeah. Describe it for us through a telescopic lens.
Describe Saturn?
Yeah.
Oh, it's gorgeous. So there you are. You have these sort of points of light on the night sky, and you look at one of them, it's just a star. It might be one color or another, but it's just a point of light. And another point of light, and another point of light. They're so far away, that's all you get it from is a point of light. You put it on Saturn, bam, there it is. There's rings, there's moons, there are weather bands, the rings have structure, and you say, wow, just like in the pictures. Wow. Because all of a sudden, a dot of light becomes another world. And when a cosmic object transforms to a world, you have different thoughts about it. It all of a sudden becomes a place you might want to visit, a place you might want to pose more questions about.
Yeah.
What would life be like there? Will we ever visit it? Is there life there now? Can we bring that life back here? Would that be safe? Would that be dangerous? It's a source of stimulated curiosity, especially since no other planet looks like Saturn
Well put.
in a telescope.
Well, it's my favorite planet now that Pluto's demoted.
And by the way, when I first saw Saturn, I communed through time back to the days of Galileo, because he was the first to look at Saturn with a telescope, and he saw this funny, he didn't identify it as a ring at the time, but he saw there were these he thought Saturn had ears. There were these the resolution of his telescope wasn't as good as even budget telescopes you can get today.
Right.
But he just thought they were ears, and he just knew something was weird about it. It required further investigation.
When I was in school, we were taught that there was no water on Mars, that Pluto was indeed a planet, and we've since learned that those things aren't true. What ways have you had to reverse your thinking as an astrophysicist? What are some big changes you've made in
I think
mindset?
one misconception regarding science is that one day might believe one thing and then believe something else. And occasionally that happens, but what's much more likely is that you have an understanding that you later learn is incomplete, and that the new understanding becomes a growth of your insight into the operations of nature rather than a reversal. So it sounds like we lost a planet. How do you have how do numbers go down in the universe? Well, actually they went up. Yes, we went from 9 planets to 8, but we went from one frozen object in the outer solar system to thousands. in a new swath of real estate now known as the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt of frozen objects is out there. Now, the solar system is more interesting than we ever imagined before. It's much more nuanced than just an enumeration of 9 planets that you memorize in your 3rd grade class. In fact, the great travesty, and I don't blame teachers for this, we as educators, as scientists are part of this exercise, that we taught the solar system for decades as an enumeration of countable planets. Of course, then, if you lose one of them, you're going to be upset, because the very foundation of your understanding flowed out of the memorized 9 planets. So, had the solar system been taught a little differently, had it been taught they're gaseous objects, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, rocky objects, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, icy bodies, if you learned them as classes of objects, then the count among them wouldn't matter. And you'd learn that a new class of icy objects in the outer solar system broadens your understanding of the solar system, not reduces it.
Neil, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing Saturn with us and Pluto and all these wonderful things.
Anytime.
Anytime. I love it. Thank you so much.
All right.
And thank all of you for joining us on Writing Out Loud.